Next question. Do you still teach or practice Tantra or sacred sexuality? Okay. I, since the early 80s, had taught Tantra and sacred sexuality. Sacred sexuality is kind of an umbrella under which Tantra and Taoist sexology and other forms of sexual studies, human sexuality and so forth, sexual healing could be under that one umbrella. In my mind, in my book, literally and figuratively, under one umbrella called sacred sexuality. I only am interested in the sacred. Any of it that's abused, misused, I'm not interested. And this is clearly a very traumatized topic. So I felt compelled to bring light to it. First, I just thought to teach it because it was a topic, and I teach just any topic that's about love and light. So I incorporated it in the early 80s, maybe 82 starting, because it was a topic like all others to me. Let's just teach it. Then after addressing and living with people who had been sexually abused, it really brought me into the depths of it. Well, in the greatest and the not so great sense, but right into the depths of it. And then it became not just, wow, this is a topic that people might like. It became a topic people must learn, healthiness and healing trauma and so forth. And me, as not just a counselor or a spiritual teacher, but also as a healer, I look at the depths of things. How can we look at that and heal that? So sexuality was one topic that I thought, let's work on this. And so I taught it in lectures. I eventually started teaching workshops on it, meaning I taught workshops, but it started becoming intensives, like 5-day intensives. Did that on an average twice a year for many, many years. I don't know, 15, 20 something years. I think it was great. I think if I had 1,000 students come through those classes, just using a round number, or even if I just said it was 100, if there were 100 students in those classes altogether, which it was far more, but if it was 100, I would say 95 of them, I'm very proud with what happened in those courses, those workshops. I think it's great. There's a couple of times that I don't think it went the way I would like it or to preferred. People that were maybe just too wounded. We usually interviewed stringently people to get into the classes because we wanted them to have integrity, but also they had to have the backbone to handle working on healing stuff and learning also about coming out to a new sexual life. So it was about healing the past, but also it was about coming out into a new life. So it was a very intimate, educational, sensual, playful, spiritual environment. We had 5 categories that we covered: spiritual, educational, etc., etc. So it was really cool, very well-rounded, and I saw a lot of people just maybe in some ways the males more than the females. The males that had insecurities and wounds came out really grateful. On average, we had a couple males per class. The women, God, the healing of some of the traumas and stuff that people had to hold space for, just amazing. But then it takes away from those who say, well, what about Tantra and what about coming out into sensuality? So we address that too and let people play and learn things and, practice exercises and all these things, from yoga to playful things to body painting, all kinds of things we did. And some people, would still, find themselves triggered and so forth. So it was quite a workshop to juggle. So I think it was great overall. However, and having written a book or two on the topic in general, one an introduction to Tantra and sacred sexuality, and the other one was Sacred Sexuality, a Manual for Living Bliss, because it was my way of saying you can bring the God element right down to this act, this sensual act. And so the first is an introductory, beautiful kind of the teaching. The other is more of a manual, exercises and all kinds of things in that one. So doing those books, doing the workshops, I started noticing sometimes, when you're really sensitive or conscientious, you could say I've got 95 people that did great, but there's 5 that something was just not right with it, whatever the thing was. And for me, sensitive, conscientious, I'm like, that's still too many. That's still too many that I'm not happy with or proud of in terms of the way it ended up. So I saw some agendas and things that were not my preferred thing. So that's one reason I really said that'll be enough. Another was having moved to Sedona and taking a role more steadily as a spiritual leader there at a center. It just the time, I couldn't break away and do 5 days. I didn't want to give the impression that that's what I was about, because Sedona has a very stringent judgmental level. There's a lot of locals that love competition and judgment. It doesn't seem like you would find that here, but you do. So there were a lot of people just really wanting me to teach that because they were excessively sexual, and other people that didn't want me to teach it because they were very judgmental about the topic. So I practiced my own sense of, hey, you know what, I don't need this or that, those two extremes. So I just said, to demonstrate the greater good and to demonstrate that I don't need to be teaching that topic, I did it as a service, because some people wondered, why would a guy teach that? So I retired from it around 2010, I guess it must have been, with only one or two exceptions, teaching a workshop. And there's also, sessions, private sessions. People used to come to me and trust me to work on that level with them. And, it's too confusing for people. It's too confusing to talk about such vulnerable things or to demonstrate with each other exercises and so on. They don't understand that I'm shifting gears from the guy at the podium to a friend, because I would say, if you want me to work with you, we're going to call ourselves friends. And I don't charge if I'm going to work at that level in those days, at that level with people, because I needed it to be something that didn't confuse with somebody who's going to work with you and do exercises with you, talk intimate and so forth. I didn't want that mixed with money and mixed with a guy getting something from somebody. I was just like, no, it's got to be more like friends. And then that tempts people to take the friends and feel even more. So it's a very confused topic. And I've shared openly that I felt and still feel sometimes a little bit of regret around having to retire from that, because some people just say, please do it again. Please teach it. So I did an online course, much cleaner, safer, but we did an online course. Blew people away, because I didn't even know what I was going to be able to do in an online course. But I shared video that was shot with me working on wounded people, but celebrities or porn stars that have had traumas in their life. And I demonstrated you can do things without disrobing, demonstrated things with people being sensual, or all the various aspects, the dance of what is sacred about sexuality. So people really were just wowed by that. Maybe that online course than any other one I had done. So that was really nice, because it was very redeeming for the topic. Because the world, as the world shames and blames a lot around sexuality. So it's nice the way it turned out. Okay?